Ever wondered how people really treat those they think are beneath them? Elon Musk's secret test with a waitress in a luxury restaurant might just change your perspective forever. Elon Musk sat quietly in his office, taking a rare moment of stillness amidst the whirlwind of innovation and ambition that had always defined his life. He had just wrapped up an intense brainstorming session with colleagues about the rapid changes in technology, society, and human behavior. During the discussion, the topic of empathy and how people perceive those around them came up. What would happen, Musk wondered, if people didn't recognize him? How would they treat someone who seemed to have nothing, stripped of the wealth, fame, and recognition that had become a part of his identity? The thought lingered with him, and soon it transformed into an irresistible challenge, an experiment to understand human nature in its most unguarded form. What if he could experience firsthand how the world would treat him if he were no longer the tech mogul everyone recognized, but a faceless, ordinary person, just another man walking down the street? Weeks passed as the idea began to take shape. Elon, known for his bold decisions, felt the need to challenge society's ingrained biases and assumptions about wealth, status, and appearance. He knew that the experiment wouldn't be about mocking anyone or pointing out flaws in human behavior, but rather about understanding the deeper currents of empathy, judgment, and societal perceptions. The setting for this experiment had to be chosen carefully. Elon decided on the Gilded Plate, an upscale restaurant located in the heart of downtown Chicago. It was known for its exclusivity, with an air of sophistication that often attracted only the city's wealthiest clientele. The restaurant's elite reputation made it an ideal place to test his theory. Would the diners and staff treat a person differently if they appeared homeless or struggling? Would they look beyond the surface, or would their judgment be shaped by appearances alone? With a final glance in the mirror, Elon felt an unfamiliar sense of vulnerability. He had never gone so far as to erase his identity before, and the transformation was striking. Gone were the sharp features of the man who had built Tesla, SpaceX, and other companies. In their place was a face weathered by time and struggle, an anonymous homeless figure. As he stepped out the door, his heart began to race, and the experiment was officially underway. Elon Musk spent the next few days preparing for his experiment, carefully selecting every element of his disguise. The goal was to make himself as unrecognizable as possible, to blend in with the crowd of people who, like so many others in the world, would judge based solely on appearances. He visited a local thrift store, picking out secondhand clothing that was old, worn, and frayed at the edges. Nothing too extravagant, but enough to signal to others that he might be a person down on his luck. He added scuffed sneakers, the kind that had seen better days, and a scruffy, unkempt wig to complete the transformation. A small makeup team worked with him, aging his face slightly, making him look tired and worn, as if the pressures of life had taken their toll. He wanted his appearance to reflect the hardships that many face daily, but without making it obvious that he was part of the elite class. When he gazed into the mirror, after the final touches, he barely recognized the figure staring back at him. The reflection was haunting and unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the image he had so often seen in the media. Gone were the sharp features of the billionaire innovator. Instead, a man who appeared to be homeless stood in his place. Elon took a deep breath, feeling a nervous thrill rise in his chest. This was a different kind of challenge, one that would test the very fabric of society's values. As he left his home and made his way to the upscale restaurant, the Gilded Plate, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The city of Chicago buzzed with its usual energy, cars honking, people bustling about on the sidewalks. But to Elon, everything felt sharper, more charged. Every step seemed to carry more weight than the one before. Arriving at the grand entrance of the Gilded Plate, he hesitated for a fraction of a second, knowing that once he crossed that threshold, the experiment would officially begin. The doors opened, and he stepped into the opulent restaurant. The gleaming chandeliers and polished floors welcomed him, but his arrival didn't go unnoticed. The staff, with their perfectly pressed uniforms and immaculate manners, gave him brief, uncomfortable glances before returning to their tasks. The patrons, too, offered fleeting looks, then quickly turned their attention back to their conversations, the whispers of disapproval already beginning to swirl. As Elon Musk stepped further into the gilded plate, the air seemed to change around him. His appearance, a far cry from the polished billionaire people were used to seeing, instantly drew the attention of the staff. The hostess, who had been greeting guests with practiced smiles, faltered as her gaze settled on him. Her professional demeanor wavered for a split second before she quickly masked her surprise with a strained, almost robotic smile. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but tight, a noticeable shift in tone. Elon, with his soft, steady voice, requested a table for one. His calm response seemed to unsettle her further, and she glanced nervously toward the bar where the manager, Victor Malone, stood watching. His sharp eyes scanned Elon's disheveled appearance, and within moments, he seemed to weigh the situation, his gaze flicking between the man in front of him and the empty tables in the dining area. The hostess, clearly uncomfortable, hurriedly replied, "We're fully booked tonight." The lie hung in the air like an unspoken truth. Elon didn't flinch. Instead, he stood there, letting the silence stretch, forcing the awkward tension to settle. He didn't challenge her or press the matter. He merely waited, his quiet presence adding to the mounting unease in the room. Across the restaurant, Sophia Harris, a 26-year-old server who had been working at the Gilded Plate for only a few months, noticed the growing tension. She had seen many customers come and go, some of them demanding, others dismissive, but something about this man intrigued her. It wasn't pity that drew her attention. It was the quiet dignity he carried despite his outward appearance. He didn't look like someone begging for attention. She could sense there was more to him than met the eye. Sophia had been saving for culinary school, and though she had her own dreams, she recognized a kind of silent resilience in Elon. Without hesitation, she called out to the hostess, offering to seat him. The room quieted for a moment, all eyes on her as she led him to a table near the kitchen. The whisper started almost immediately. Patrons exchanged glances, some clearly uncomfortable, others murmuring disapproval. One server leaned toward another and muttered, "What's he even doing here?" Another added, "This is going to scare off the regulars." Elon overheard the judgment, but he said nothing. He took a seat quietly, knowing the experiment was only just beginning. The subtle dismissals from the staff continued as Sophia placed the menu in front of him, her kindness shining through. She ignored the whispers and the subtle glances from the others, choosing instead to treat Elon like any other customer. But it was clear. The weight of judgment was heavy, and the room was divided. As Elon Musk settled into his seat, he couldn't help but observe the reactions around him. The tension in the restaurant was palpable, thickened by the disapproving glances from the patrons and the uncomfortable shifts in the staff's behavior. Elon kept his eyes fixed on the menu, deliberately avoiding looking up too often. His attention was more focused on the subtle interactions that took place around him, the small but telling details that spoke volumes about how people were perceiving him. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the hostess glance over at him once more, this time a quick, almost fearful look before she busied herself with another task. Across the room, the bartender exchanged a chuckle with one of the servers, a quiet joke that Elon couldn't quite hear but recognized from the body language and the uncomfortable smiles. He overheard bits of conversation from the diners around him, snippets of judgment veiled in whispered comments. A businessman, seated with colleagues, leaned in to ask in a hushed voice, "What's management thinking, letting someone like that in here?" Another diner, a woman in a fur coat, looked up and quickly turned her gaze away, clearly unnerved by his presence. Elon didn't react to any of this. He remained composed, his calm demeanor betraying nothing of the slight discomfort he was feeling. The whispers didn't bother him. If anything, they confirmed the very reason he was there. The way society's judgments were passed based on appearance and status was becoming clearer with every passing minute. When Sophia returned to take his order, he asked for something simple: soup and bread, a modest request that matched the humble exterior he was projecting. Her response was one of surprise, but she didn't question him. She nodded, seemingly content to serve him as she would any other customer, though her smile remained warm, genuine, and noticeably different from the polite yet forced smiles he had encountered from others. As Sophia walked away, Elon's mind began to race. What he was witnessing wasn't just about how he was being treated, but about the assumptions people were making about him without knowing anything at all. The deeper divide was between those who saw only the surface and those, like Sophia, who still treated him with dignity despite everything. The experiment was revealing the true nature of human behavior in a way he had not anticipated. As Elon Musk finished his soup, the atmosphere in the gilded plate had reached its boiling point. The hushed whispers had grown louder, and the judgmental glances from the diners and staff were becoming almost unbearable. Elon felt the weight of their disdain, but remained unfazed, his focus sharp and steady. He had learned exactly what he had come to see: how quickly people would judge him based solely on his appearance, without any understanding of who he truly was. But the experiment wasn't over yet. He knew the real purpose of this moment had to be about revealing the truth, about showing the world how quickly society could dismiss someone simply because they didn't fit a certain mold. As he stood up from his table, the murmurs in the room ceased, and every eye in the restaurant followed his movement. With quiet determination, Elon began to walk toward the center of the room, each step echoing through the silence. His every movement drew attention, the tension in the air thickening as the manager, Victor Malone, quickly approached, his stiff posture reflecting the unease in the room. "Excuse me, sir," Victor said, his voice clipped. "If you're finished, I'll have to ask you to leave." Elon paused, raising his hand in a calm but commanding gesture. "I'll leave shortly," he said evenly, "but before I go, I need to say something." The room fell silent. The diners, who had been sneering and whispering just moments ago, now waited, their curiosity piqued. Elon's voice rang out, carrying a mix of disappointment and resolve. "Tonight, I came here not as the man you know, but as someone you wouldn't even give a second glance. I wanted to see how you would treat someone you believe is beneath you," he continued, his gaze sweeping over the room. "I witnessed disdain, I heard whispers, and I felt judgment, all because of how I appeared." The impact of his words hung heavy in the air, and just as the realization began to sink in, Elon reached up and removed the wig that had concealed his identity. Gas echoed around the room as recognition washed over the faces of the shocked patrons. "Yes, it's me," Elon said quietly, allowing the truth to settle in. "But the important question is, how did you treat me tonight?" The silence was deafening as the full weight of the moment crashed down on the restaurant's occupants. In the days that followed, news of Elon Musk's undercover experiment spread like wildfire across social media platforms and news outlets, igniting debates about empathy, societal judgment, and the power of appearances. Headlines such as "Elon Musk tests humanity at upscale restaurant" and "Billionaire rewards kindness in unforgettable experiment" flooded the media, drawing millions of views and comments. As the story gained traction, many began reflecting on their own behavior, questioning how often they judged others based on superficial traits. The gilded plate quickly became the center of attention, with both praise and criticism pouring in. While some admired Elon's boldness in conducting such a revealing social experiment, others criticized the restaurant staff's initial reactions, calling them out for their lack of empathy and judgment. Sophia Harris, whose life was forever changed by Elon's generosity, found herself thrust into the spotlight. Reporters sought her out for interviews, eager to hear her perspective on the experiment. Despite her initial hesitation, Sophia's words resonated with many. It wasn't about knowing who he was, she explained in one interview. It was about treating someone with dignity, no matter their circumstances. That's something we should all do. Her newfound platform gave her the opportunity to advocate for kindness and inclusivity, especially within the service industry, and her story inspired countless others. The $50,000 check Elon had given her allowed Sophia to finally pursue her dream of culinary school. But more than that, it provided her with a sense of purpose and a renewed understanding of the power of kindness. Meanwhile, the Gilded Plate underwent significant changes. The management introduced new training programs focused on empathy, ensuring that all customers, regardless of their appearance, would be treated with respect. The experiment, though simple in its execution, had left a profound impact on everyone involved, and for many, it would forever serve as a reminder that true character shines brightest when it is least expected. In today's world, where appearances often shape our judgments, kindness and respect are the true measures of a person's worth. The story of Elon Musk's undercover test at the Gilded Plate highlights a critical lesson. How we treat others, regardless of their background or appearance, speaks volumes about our character. As we age, we often find ourselves more reflective on the importance of empathy and understanding. The interaction between Elon and Sophia shows that small acts of kindness can make a profound impact, especially in a world that sometimes overlooks those who appear different. This story encourages us to evaluate our own biases and reminds us that everyone, no matter their situation, deserves to be treated with dignity. For seniors who have lived through decades of societal changes, it's a reminder that compassion is timeless and should be shared across generations. We can all be a positive influence by embracing kindness and teaching others to do the same. What do you think? How can we, as a community, work towards fostering more empathy and less judgment in today's society? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear your perspective.